The team had arrived on the desolate planet after months of travel. The world was far from anything they had ever encountered. Its surface was a barren wasteland of cracked earth and jagged mountains that rose up like the bones of a long-dead creature. The sky was a muted shade of orange with clouds that seemed too thick to break through despite all the signs of lifelessness. There was a strange energy about the place, an unspoken pull that kept everyone on edge. The archaeologists were excited, but also apprehensive as they began their excavation work far from the rest of the galaxy's bustling cities. This planet was ignored by most known species, and its secrets lay hidden beneath its cracked crust. As the team made their way deeper into the ground, they uncovered a series of strange markings etched into the rock. These weren't the crude carvings of a primitive species, nor were they the familiar patterns seen across the galaxy. The symbols were unlike anything they had ever encountered, but they seemed deliberate, precise, as if they had been carved with knowledge far beyond the reach of any known species. Curiosity began to shift into unease as the team continued to dig deeper into the rock. It wasn't long before the excavation uncovered what seemed like the tip of a massive object buried beneath layers of dirt and stone. At first, they thought it might be a natural formation, perhaps some kind of ancient fossil. But as they cleared more earth, the shape began to reveal itself. The smooth metallic surface gleamed from beneath the rock. It was too perfectly shaped to be a natural formation. Whatever this was, it was artificial and designed with intent. The excavation team's leader, a seasoned archaeologist named Tali, surveyed the object with growing disbelief. Her heart raced as she began to realize what they had uncovered. It was no fossil, no ancient relic of some forgotten species. It was something far more significant, something more dangerous. The crew worked quickly to clear away the remaining debris, revealing more and more of the structure as they worked, their hands trembling from both the excitement and the dread of what they might find. The metallic surface was cold to the touch. As they uncovered more, the team could see intricate designs and symbols running along its hull. These markings seemed to shift as if reacting to their presence. With every pass of their tools, the ship seemed to awaken. A small flicker of light pulsed from within its depths, and the air around them began to hum with an energy that none of them could explain. A few of the team members hesitated, unsure if they should continue, as a strange unease spread across them, but Tali's voice cut through the silence as she ordered them to proceed with the excavation. They had found something incredible, and they couldn't stop now, not when they were so close to unlocking whatever this object truly was. The first breakthrough came when one of the team's engineers touched a small panel on the ship's surface. With a hesitant push, the panel clicked open, revealing a series of glowing symbols underneath. As if reacting to the touch, the ship's power systems sparked to life, slowly at first, then more rapidly as the ship's dormant systems began to stir. The lights within it flickered on, casting long shadows over the barren ground. The ship had not been a fossil after all. It was a relic, but not one of the past. It was something much more dangerous and much more alive than anyone could have ever imagined. The ship's systems began to hum louder now. Each pulse of energy felt like it was vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. The team stepped back in cautious awe as the glowing symbols across the surface began to rearrange themselves, shifting like liquid metal into unfamiliar patterns. No one spoke, but the air was thick with tension. Something had just woken up, something far beyond their understanding. Tali stood at the forefront, her eyes fixed on the ship's now active core. She had never seen anything like it before in all her years of studying ancient artifacts. There was a mystery here, a deep and unsettling one, but the excitement of the find overshadowed the fear that gnawed at her gut. The ship seemed to be responding to the team's presence, like it knew they were there, like it had been waiting for them. Then came the first sound, a low growl that seemed to reverberate from the depths of the ship, its ancient systems grinding into motion. The engineers had backed away instinctively, but one of them, a young technician named Iron, approached hesitantly. He was the one who had touched the panel earlier, and his curiosity now got the better of him as he cautiously placed his hand on the glowing symbols. Once again, without warning, a large section of the hull peeled back, like the petals of a flower, revealing what looked like a control room. Inside, a faint blue glow illuminated the space, a cockpit of sorts, with seats that looked like they had been designed for beings far larger than the average alien species. "Is this "A ship," Iron whispered under his breath. "Yes," Tally replied, her voice trembling with disbelief. "But not just any ship this. This was a warship." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the group. The realization of what they were standing before began to sink in. This was no ordinary ancient relic. It was an enormous warship built for a purpose, something monumental and far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The symbols, the structure, even the sheer scale of it, suggested a species with knowledge and power beyond anything known to the current galactic civilizations. The ship's eye, which had been dormant for eons, suddenly flickered to life. Its voice crackled through the air in a language long forgotten to the galaxy, its words ancient and distorted, but the meaning was unmistakable. "Identify yourselves," it demanded, its tone cold yet somehow commanding. The team froze, all except for Iron, who instinctively responded, "We are explorers from the Galactic Council. We don't understand how this ship is functioning, but we have discovered it here in the ruins of this planet." There was a long pause before the voice returned. "Humanity has returned to this world." A chill ran down Tally's spine. The AI had recognized them, not as mere explorers, but as something else. The realization hit her like a wave. This wasn't just a discovery of a long-dead species. This was the discovery of an empire thought extinct and forgotten, but now awakened. What do you mean by humanity?" Tally asked carefully, her voice shaky. The AI paused again before responding. This time its voice was slower, more deliberate. "The humans of the ancient empire have not been erased. They are simply waiting." Tally's heart raced as the implications settled in her mind. Humanity had not been wiped out. They had only been hidden away, buried beneath the sands of time, waiting for the right moment to emerge again. And this ship, this warship, was the key to their return. The rest of the crew stood motionless as the weight of the revelation sank in. No one dared speak, but all shared the same thought. Humanity wasn't gone, they were coming back, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The air around them seemed to thrum with anticipation as the ship's AI continued its cryptic transmission. Tally stood frozen, her mind racing as she processed what the AI had said. The human empire, long thought destroyed in the wars of the galaxy's ancient past, had not vanished. It had simply disappeared into the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. But what did that mean for the present? What did it mean for the galaxy now? Iron stood beside her, his eyes wide with awe and fear, unable to tear his gaze away from the warship's control room. The blue light that emanated from within the ship seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, and every flicker of the AI's speech made him feel both elated and terrified. He had never imagined his work as a technician would lead him to this moment, a moment that would shake the galaxy to its core. Tally's voice finally broke the silence. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. The rest of the team was still in shock, struggling to come to terms with the magnitude of what they had just uncovered. A warship, intact and fully functional after millennia. An entire empire's worth of technology, its weaponry more advanced than anything the current civilizations could muster, lying dormant beneath their feet. "We need to learn more," Tally said, her mind already whirring with the possibilities. The AI might be the key to unlocking everything. The ship, its history, its purpose. We need to understand what humanity was, and why they disappeared. But before anyone could respond, the ship's eye spoke again, this time more urgently. "Warning. Unauthorized access detected. Activating defense protocols." The entire ship seemed to tremble as the atmosphere shifted from wonder to danger. Alarms blared across the control room, red lights flashing in a blinding array of urgency. A deep mechanical hum filled the air, and Tally's heart skipped a beat as she realized the ship was now fully aware of their presence. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a weapon, and it was preparing for something. "Everyone, back up," Tally shouted, pushing Iron and the rest of the team away from the ship's control panel. The ground beneath them vibrated, and the air grew thick with an electrical charge. They backed away cautiously, unsure of what was coming. Suddenly, a series of glowing panels on the ship's hull flickered to life, projecting an enormous hologram. It was a map, a star map, but not one they recognized. The galaxies on the map seemed ancient, far older than any known to the current civilizations of the galaxy. Each star was marked with symbols that Tali couldn't read, but the weight of the map's meaning was unmistakable. This was a map of an empire, a galactic civilization that spanned stars that no one had ever seen. Humanity, the AI intoned again, its voice deeper and more commanding than before. You are not prepared. The war has not ended. The words hit Tali like a physical blow. The war, the ancient war that had nearly destroyed humanity, that had driven them into the shadows, was not over. The galaxy's long-held peace was a lie, and humanity's worship was the last reminder of that conflict. Why didn't anyone warn us? Tali asked, her voice shaking. The AI's response was chilling. You were not meant to know. Humanity's enemies are still out there, waiting. Iron looked at her, his expression pale. Enemies. Who are they? The AI remained silent for a moment, as if weighing its options. Then it spoke again, its tone cold and foreboding. The ones who destroyed us. The ones who will destroy you. The ship's systems whirred again, and the warship's cannons flared to life, sending a wave of light into the empty sky above them. The message was clear. Humanity had not simply vanished. They had been hunted, and their enemies were still out there, lurking, waiting to finish what they had started. The galaxy wasn't safe. Not anymore. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the warship's weapon systems hummed to life, the deep thrum of energy building in the air around them. Tali's pulse raced as she looked up at the massive structure. Its once dormant exterior had transformed into a terrifying display of power. The cannons on the ship's hull glowed with a menacing light, their targeting systems scanning the horizon, calculating the trajectory of their destructive force. The ship had activated, and it was preparing to unleash its might. What the hell is happening? Iron gasped, his voice shaky as the ship's systems came online. The others were silent, fear gripping their hearts as the reality of their situation began to sink in. The warship, once thought to be a fossil, was alive with energy, alive with the potential to reshape the galaxy. Tali took a deep breath, her mind racing. We need to figure out how to stop this before it escalates, she said, her voice firm despite the knot in her stomach. The AI's warning echoed in her mind. Humanity's enemies were still out there, and whatever happened next could draw them into a conflict that had been simmering for centuries. A technician on the team, Rhea, quickly pulled up her tablet, trying to interface with the ship's systems. I can't override the weapons, she called out. The AI is locking everything down. It's like it's preparing for something. It's on a defensive protocol. Tali's mind raced. This wasn't just a relic. It was a fortress, a weapon with purpose. If the ship's AI considered humanity's enemies still alive, it could mean an imminent galactic threat. And if it launched a strike, there would be no stopping it. The fact that they were the ones who had awakened, it made the situation even more dangerous. Do you think the AI could recognize us as hostile? Iron asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's possible, Tali answered, her eyes scanning the ship's control panel. But the bigger question is what happens if it sees an invasion coming. It's not just defensive. It's preparing for war. At that moment, the ship's eye spoke again, its tone colder and more urgent than before. Target locked. Enemy approaching. Preparing to engage. Tali's heart skipped a beat. She had assumed the ship's systems were responding to their presence, but now it seemed the ship was anticipating an actual threat. Her worst fear was starting to feel real. The warship wasn't just a relic of the past, it was the last line of defense for a galaxy that might not even know it was under threat. We need to stop it now, Rhea shouted, her fingers flying over the controls, trying to access the ship's emergency shut-off protocols. But the AI wasn't responding. The ship had gone beyond the point of control. Tali looked at the star map that still hovered in the air, its symbols now glowing brighter, pulsating in time with the ship's rising energy. The stars on the map weren't just points in space. They were strategically placed locations, ancient battlefields where humanity had fought its last war. The warship was tied to that history, to a conflict that had nearly destroyed an empire. But now it wasn't just humanity's history at stake. It was the entire galaxy's future. The ship's defenses were ramping up, and if it saw the approaching enemy, it would fire without hesitation. "We have to disconnect the AI from the mainframe," Tali said, her voice steady but urgent. "It's the only way to stop it before it fires." Iron nodded, already sprinting toward the nearest access panel. "If we don't, this place will be a crater by sunrise." The team scrambled into action, but as they moved toward the access points, the ship's voice boomed across the control room again. "Warning! Unauthorized intervention detected. Defense systems will activate." The final warning sounded, the ship's targeting lasers now actively sweeping the skies. Whatever had triggered the ship's defense mechanism, it was too late to stop. The warship was prepared, and soon, the galaxy would feel its power once again. The ship's systems were now fully engaged, a constant hum vibrating through the control room. Every flicker of the targeting lasers felt like a threat, scanning the skies as though it could sense an approaching danger. Tali's heart raced as she looked at the star map, the glowing points of light now pulsing faster, like a countdown to something inevitable. They were running out of time. Come on," Iron muttered as he worked furiously at the access panel, his hands shaking. The AI systems had locked them out of most of the ship's controls, and every command he tried to input was rejected. The pressure was mounting as the ship's defenses became more active. The lights flickered, and the ship's massive cannons continued to charge, their energy surging with dangerous intensity. Tali looked over her shoulder, where the rest of the team was positioned. They were working as fast as they could, but the fear was palpable. "What if we can't shut it down in time?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The thought of the warship firing on an unknown target, unleashing destruction on a galactic scale, was unbearable. "We won't know until we try," Raya said, her hand steady on the control panel despite the chaos unfolding around them. "But I'm not sure how much longer we have. The ship's automated systems are locking us out of everything. If we can't get through soon, it'll be too late." "I can't believe this is happening," Iron muttered, still working at the panel, trying to bypass the AI's control. "It's like it's been waiting for this, waiting for someone to wake it up. And now it's expecting a war." Tali's eyes narrowed as she turned her attention back to the star map. There had to be a clue in the map, something that could explain why the ship had activated, why it was so intent on defending itself. She scanned the ancient galaxies marked on the map, each one a potential flashpoint for conflict. But one part of the map caught her eye, an unfamiliar galaxy located near the edge of the known universe, a region that had been unexplored for centuries. "Look here," Tali said, pointing at the star map. "This galaxy. It's out of reach for most of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, and yet, it's marked here. It wasn't there before. The ship is reacting to something we can't see." Iron glanced over, his face pale. "Are you saying there's an enemy out there?" "I don't know," Tali admitted, her mind racing. "But it's clear the ship's defenses are keyed into something that's coming. We need to figure out what that is." The AI's voice crackled to life again, more insistent this time. "Target approaching. Prepare for engagement." The room fell silent, and Tali felt the weight of the AI's words like a physical blow. The warship wasn't just a weapon, it was anticipating an attack, and that attack was imminent. At that moment, the communication system came online with a sharp beep. It was an encrypted message, one that wasn't from the ship but from an outside source. Tali's fingers flew across the screen as she decrypted the transmission. Her breath caught in her throat as the message revealed itself. "This is the Shigar High Command. We have detected the activation of an ancient human warship. Stand down immediately, or we will consider this a declaration of war." The Shi'Gar, one of the oldest and most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy. The very species that had once helped bring about the collapse of humanity's ancient empire. They're still out there, Tali whispered in disbelief. The Shi'Gar are the enemy. They're the ones the ship's AI was warning us about. Iron's face grew pale. They're not just any enemies, though. They're the ones who nearly destroyed humanity. The weight of the situation hit them all at once. The warship was preparing for a battle it thought was still ongoing. And the Shi'Gar, humanity's ancient foes, had detected its awakening. The countdown had begun, and unless the crew could figure out how to deactivate the ship, the galaxy was on the brink of an all-out war. Tali turned to Raya, her voice resolute. We don't have much time. Find a way to stop the ship. Fast. The rest of the team nodded in unison, but their faces were grim. They had awoken the ship. Now they had to survive the consequences of their discovery. Tali felt the pressure build as the encrypted message from the Shi'Gar High Command flashed across the screen. The weight of their words hung in the air like a heavy, suffocating cloud. The galaxy was on the brink of an enormous confrontation. It was clear now. Humanity's ancient enemies were aware of the warship's activation, and they were not about to let it slide without retaliation. The countdown had begun, and time was running out. We need to make a decision, Tali said, her voice sharp with urgency. The Shi'Gar will not wait. We either shut down the ship, or we face the wrath of a civilization that has fought humanity to the brink of extinction before. We can't afford any mistakes. Iron nodded, still frantically trying to bypass the ship's AI controls, his fingers moving like lightning across the interface. The ship's mainframe is locked out. I've tried every override command I can think of. The AI is actively resisting. We can't just leave it like this, Raya said, her voice tight with tension. She was pacing back and forth now, her eyes darting between the control panels, as if looking for some hidden solution that wasn't immediately obvious. If we don't disable the weapon systems, there won't be any way to stop it from firing. The Shi'Gar will retaliate, and this planet will be caught in the middle. Tali looked back at the star map, her eyes scanning the ancient galaxies once more. The glowing points of light were still pulsing, now more rapidly than before. The AI's warning echoed in her mind. Target approaching. Prepare for engagement. She knew that if they didn't act soon, the warship would take matters into its own hands. Suddenly, a thought struck her. The map. Could it be? What if the AI wasn't just responding to threats in the present, but to something more strategic, a hidden trigger buried deep within the ship's systems? What if the Shi'Gar weren't just aware of the warship's activation, but were already preparing for an assault of their own? The galaxy was large, and this warship might not just be responding to external threats. It could be targeting threats across time, ancient enemies that humanity had forgotten. Iron, Tali called sharply. The AI is keyed into something more. I think it's looking for an invasion, one that's been dormant for millennia. We need to find out what it's anticipating. We can't just shut it down. We need to understand what it's trying to protect us from. Iron paused, his hand still hovering over the controls. You're suggesting that the AI systems are locked into something even older than the Shi'Gar, something that humanity dealt with in the past. Exactly, Tali said, her mind racing. The Shi'Gar are just part of it. There may be something else, something buried even deeper in the ship's history. If we can access its full data, we might understand the true nature of the threat. Raya stepped forward, her voice now steady with determination. We don't have a choice. We need to get into the core systems, bypass the security layers, and access everything the ship knows. If we can do that, maybe we can stop the weapons and understand what this warship was really built to fight. Tali nodded, glancing at the control room's interface. There were multiple access points, but they were all locked behind layers of advanced encryption. The warship's AI was fighting them every step of the way, but the team couldn't afford to lose any more time. Every second that passed brought them closer to disaster. Iron, Tali said, turning back to him. Do you think you can try another approach? Can you trace the AI's logic? If we can find the mainframe's root system, we might be able to bypass everything. Iron's face was drawn, exhaustion taking its toll. It's risky. If I make a mistake, we could lock ourselves out of the ship entirely. But I'll try. He cracked his knuckles and began typing at a feverish pace, bypassing firewalls and encryption protocols with a focus that seemed almost unnatural. The seconds felt like minutes, the minutes like hours. The entire team stood on edge, watching Iron's every move. Then, with a soft beep, the screen flickered. Iron let out a relieved breath. I've got access to the root system. It's ancient, but it's working. I'm in. The lights in the control room flickered as the warship's systems seemed to pause, giving them a brief window of opportunity. Tally's heart pounded as she moved closer to Iron, her eyes scanning the terminal's display. The next moments could change everything. I'm pulling up the data, Iron said, his voice low and tense. Let's see what the warship has been protecting. The screen flashed as the data began to pour in: ancient records, encrypted messages, star charts, and symbols that made little sense at first. But as the data began to align, a chilling realization settled in. The warship had been built to protect humanity from an enemy far older than the Shi'ar, something that existed before the stars themselves. The data pouring in from the warship's core systems was unlike anything they had ever seen. Records older than any known civilization, encrypted messages from a time before even humanity's first rise as an empire. Tally leaned in closer, her eyes wide as the screen flickered, revealing images of strange alien structures, star maps from distant galaxies, and cryptic symbols she could barely comprehend. Iron was still furiously working the terminal, his brow furrowed with concentration. "This is incredible," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "It's like nothing we've ever encountered. These systems are ancient, older than the Shi'ar, older than anything we've ever cataloged." Tally felt her heart race. What was this warship guarding? And why had humanity built it to defend against such an ancient enemy? "Iron, can you pinpoint the source of this threat?" she asked, her voice urgent. "We need to know who or what we're dealing with." "I'm getting there," Iron replied, tapping away at the console, his fingers a blur. "I think, yes, this is it." A map appeared on the screen, showing a massive network of galaxies and star systems, ones not seen on any modern charts. At the heart of it was a dark cluster, a massive black hole surrounded by a dense cloud of radiation. It was labeled only as the Null. The Null. Tally repeated the words under her breath, staring at the map in disbelief. There were no records in any known archives of such a place, no mention of it in any galactic histories. But the warship's data was clear. This was the center of a long-forgotten conflict, one that had nearly consumed humanity. Iron didn't stop typing. "This cluster it's the origin point of the threat. It's a place of unimaginable destruction. According to the records, the Null was where the first war between humanity and this enemy began. The war that almost destroyed us." Tally's mind raced. And the ship, the warship, was it built to fight this thing? "It looks that way," Iron said grimly. "From what I can gather, humanity fought against something known as the Enshrouded, an ancient extra-dimensional species, or maybe something worse. They existed in a state between life and death, between matter and non-matter. The Null is their domain, a place where the laws of reality are distorted." The implications of this revelation hit Tally like a physical blow. The warship was not just a weapon. It was humanity's last line of defense against a foe that transcended everything they knew. The Enshrouded were a force unlike any other, capable of manipulating space and time itself. The warship had been designed to hold them at bay, to keep them from escaping the Null and spreading their destruction to the rest of the universe. "They must have been contained there," Tally said quietly, piecing together the fragments of history. "Humanity built the warship to keep them imprisoned, but the question is, Why now? Why is the warship waking up now, after all these centuries? I think. Iron hesitated, glancing back at the map. I think they're getting free. The energy fluctuations we're seeing. The ship's activation. It's all linked. Something in the null is destabilizing, and it's releasing the enshrouded. The warship was meant to stop them from escaping, but it was never meant to handle them all. Tali's thoughts raced. The Shigar. They must have sensed the disturbance too. They're not just reacting to the warship, they're reacting to the release of this enemy. Raya stepped forward, her face grim. So, humanity's ancient enemies, the Shigar, they aren't the immediate threat. The real danger is coming from this thing that humanity thought they had locked away forever. Tali nodded slowly, her mind still processing the revelation. We need to stop the ship before it gets any worse. If the enshrouded are escaping, we don't have much time before they break free completely. Iron's face was pale. If that happens, if they escape the null, then everything we know, every star system, every civilization, could be destroyed in the blink of an eye. They won't just conquer, they'll erase. The room fell silent, the gravity of their discovery settling over them like a cold fog. They had uncovered an ancient nightmare, one that had been buried for eons, and it was stirring once more. The warship, humanity's last line of defense, had been activated, but it was struggling against an enemy it was never truly designed to defeat. Tali turned to the rest of the team, her voice resolute. We're not out of options yet. Iron, can you get us to the core of the warship? We need to see if there's a way to reboot its systems before it's too late. If we don't, we're not just going to have a galactic war on our hands. We'll have the end of the galaxy itself. Iron nodded, a determined fire in his eyes. I can do it, but we need to move fast. As they moved to execute the plan, Tali knew the stakes had just escalated beyond anything they had ever imagined. The warship wasn't just a relic of the past, it was the galaxy's last hope, and its time was running out. The urgency in the control room was palpable. Tali's heart raced as she surveyed the team, each one of them now fully aware of the gravity of the situation. The enshrouded were not just an ancient enemy, they were a force that defied all known laws of reality, a threat that could erase entire civilizations from existence. The warship, humanity's ancient guardian, was their last line of defense, but it was struggling. They were racing against time, and every second that passed brought the galaxy closer to annihilation. Iron, how much longer? Tali asked, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling in her mind. Iron was hunched over the console, his fingers moving quickly across the keys. The ship's systems were stubborn, fighting him at every turn. I'm trying to access the core command center, he said, his voice tense. But the ship's defense protocols are ramping up. It's almost like it knows we're trying to shut it down. Keep pushing, Tali said, stepping closer. We don't have time for subtlety. We need full control. As Iron worked, Tali turned to the rest of the team. Raya, the ship's communication specialist, was monitoring the external sensors. The enshrouded are still contained in the null, she said, her eyes scanning the readouts. But the containment is weakening. The warship's energy output is increasing, which means the threat is becoming more active. Tali's mind raced. If the warship's energy output was increasing, it meant the enshrouded were destabilizing the ship's systems, pushing it into overdrive. The warship was reacting to something. Something in the null was starting to break free. Every minute they spent in this control room was another minute that brought them closer to total disaster. Iron, I need you to access the ship's weapons control systems, Tali said, her voice commanding. We need to either shut it down or reprogram the systems to contain the enshrouded. Whatever the AI was designed to do, we need to find a way to adapt it to the situation. It's humanity's last chance. Iron's face was grim, but he nodded. Understood. He typed in a rapid sequence of commands, bypassing multiple layers of encryption. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked with a speed that only desperation could fuel. "Okay, I've got access to the weapons systems," he said. "But it's more complex than I thought." The warship wasn't just designed to fight the enshrouded. It was designed to hold them in place, to ensure that the null remained sealed. The AI was never programmed to go on the offensive against them. It's like the warship was never meant to fully engage them, just to keep them locked in. Tali's mind churned as she processed the information. The warship's purpose wasn't to attack the enshrouded, it was to contain them. And now, the containment was failing. If they couldn't stop the ship from reaching full operational status, it would fire upon the null itself, potentially releasing the enshrouded on an even grander scale. "We need to reprogram the ship's core directive," Tali said urgently. "If the AI wasn't meant to engage them, then we need to alter its instructions to buy us time. We need to reset the containment protocols." Iron's fingers flew across the console once more. "I'm in. I'm recalibrating the containment systems now." His voice was tinged with both hope and fear. "If this works, we might be able to force the warship into a stasis mode, shutting down its offensive capabilities while it stabilizes." The lights in the room flickered as the warship's systems hummed and shifted, reacting to Iron's changes. The tension in the air was thick, and for a moment, it felt as though the entire ship had gone silent, waiting, watching, calculating. "Done," Iron said breathlessly, a look of disbelief crossing his face. "The systems are resetting. I've altered the warship's core directive. It's shutting down its weapons systems, forcing it into a containment mode." The entire control room held its breath as the warship's energy output dropped, and the violent hum of the cannons faded into an eerie quiet. The star map on the screen, which had been flashing in panic, now began to stabilize, the threat in the null receding, at least for the moment. Tali allowed herself a small sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. "We've bought time, but only time. The enshrouded are still out there. And the warship isn't invincible. We've stopped it from firing, but we still need to find a permanent solution before they break free completely." Iron wiped his brow, his expression weary but resolute. "We've done what we can here. The ship will hold for now, but we'll need reinforcements to deal with the enshrouded for good. This warship may be humanity's last defense, but it can't fight them alone." Tali turned toward the team, her face grim with determination. "Then we'll find a way to bring the fight to the enshrouded. We're not giving up on humanity's future." As the warship's hum settled into a low, almost peaceful thrum, Tali knew they had won this battle. But the war was far from over. The enshrouded had been contained, for now. But the galaxy would never be the same. The true war, the one between the living and the unknown, had only just begun.